The Boys, Dear Becky, Issue 1, written by Garth Ennis and art by Russ, Braun. Alright, so we are diving back into the world of The Boys in a brand new miniseries called The Boys, Dear Becky. It is set 12 years after the initial series ended, and it is a sequel slash prequel. So we're going to have a little bit of timeline before The Boys as well as after The Boys and see what Hughie has been up to. Now, I'm a big fan of the original series. I did a series of 12 videos breaking the entire rundown, so check those out if you are interested. Now, we have Garth Ennis returning to this miniseries, as well as series regular artist Russ Braun, so it's great to have that crew back together. I will say, though, I was a big fan of the way the original series ended, and I don't think we had to revisit that world, but with the success of the Amazon TV show, Garth Ennis and Dannymalt Comics wanted to capitalize by putting a new miniseries out there, and I can't blame them for that. And because I am a big fan of the initial series, I, of course, want to see what they are going to do with it and how they are going to return to that world. So I'm very interested to see what's going to go down in this miniseries. So let's dive into the story for Issue 1, and then I will give my thoughts afterwards. Issue 1, Saturday. This issue opens up 12 years after the climactic events of the Boys series. We are in the Scottish town of Auchterladle, which is Hughie's hometown. Hughie is still with Annie, and they are temporarily staying in Scotland here until Hughie can sell his parents' home. Hughie is hanging out with his transgender friend, Bobby, whom you may remember from Volume 8 of The Boys, the Highland Laddie miniseries. Bobby gives Hughie a hard time saying, "Hey, you called me Bobby with a Y, not with an I." Now that Bobby's a girl, he doesn't like that. Hughie says, "No, I didn't. I said it with an I." Bobby laughs, though. He was just messing with Hughie and giving Hughie a hard time. Hughie, he goes to grab some more drinks. The barkeep, a Mr. Holmes, aka Beezer, who hates Hughie, tells Hughie, "I pray every night you get cancer of the cock and die." And Hughie, not thinking much of it, says, "Seems a wee bit extreme, Beezer." And Beezer tells Hughie, "And then you stick it up your tranny pal's ass and he gets it too." Hughie just completes his order and rejoins Bobby at the table. None of them really care too much about what Beezer says nowadays. Now, Hughie is talking with Bobby about Twitter warriors who are super woke and how phony they are, and various other woke things that annoy him, like white male privilege, to affirmative action, to the fact that there's no black cast members on Friends, and that somehow that annoys people. All this new woke stuff is just supremely annoying Hughie. Now Bobby, he eventually asks Hughie if he's going to try to have any kids with Annie, but Hughie says Annie can't have kids, something to do with when she was younger. Besides, Hughie says that he's seen the world at its worst and he doesn't like the idea of bringing an innocent child into it. And Annie, she had a rough time when she was a kid as well, so they just don't want to have kids. Bobby eventually says that he was glad there was no bloody superhuman apocalypse 10 years ago. He says, "I'm glad the Yanks managed to stop those bastards in front of the Pentagon." So right now he's referring to the events of the original series. Bobby continues, "But honestly, it looks like we're perfectly capable of fucking up the world all by ourselves. So even without the soups and them out of the way, the world still managed to be all messed up." Hughie jumps in, "Well, if we are messing up the world, we're not gonna fix it by clawing each other's eyes out on the way up the moral high ground." And Bobby replies to Hughie saying, "Oh, Hughie, you really do not like the wokery-pokery, do you? I'm not saying I disagree with you that much. There's an awful lot of self-serving bollocks, but I don't know, man. There's times I think you're a wee bit hard on folks." Hughie and Bobby, they head outside to the beach, and they talk about that bartender, old Beezer, that they saw in the bar earlier. Hughie says, old Beezer told him that he hopes both of them get coronavirus. By the way, I guarantee that line was not in the original script, and Garth Ennis edited it in there in the last moment, because it doesn't really fit with the rest of the story right now. Bobby talks about the world without all these superhumans, but all the bad stuff that's going on in the world, like that dickhead in the White House, referring to Trump, and fucking Brexit, and the planet being on fire. Do you think it's just life going back to what it would have been anyway without the soups? Hughie says that he never thought he'd say this, but he's glad his parents aren't around to see how things are going. It would have broken their hearts. So we learn here that Hughie's parents have indeed passed away in the years since the original series ended. Bobby, talking about Brexit, says, "Can you believe we had folks around here voting leave, even though we're in Scotland?" Saying stuff like, "We don't like immigrants. What fucking immigrants in Scotland, ye das cunts?" Hughie comments, "Good luck living in the ass end of nowhere without any EU funding." So we're about halfway through issue 1, and we don't have that much actual story going on. We mostly just have Garth Ennis giving his political thoughts on Trump, Brexit, and woke culture we have today. Bobby asks Hughie if he's ever going to marry Annie, and if they are going to get married, can he be her bridesmaid and his best man? Hughie laughs at this, but Hughie tells Bobby not to start. Hughie explains that he's here in Scotland because his parents' house has to be sold, but that sale fell through, so now he's waiting to put the house back on the market. And Bobby says, "Well, you've been waiting a while." Bobby asks Hughie, "So what have you been doing for work the last 10 years or so?" And Hughie says that he has a pension from his last job, and let's just leave it at that. Hughie, he then gets a text from Annie, and Annie says a mystery parcel has arrived for Hughie in the mail at their place. Before Hughie heads back home, him and Bobby, they have a toast, and Hughie says, "Here's to the world getting worse slower than it's probably going to." And Bobby cheers to that, and then he asks Hughie before they part, "You're not a superhero, are you?" And Hughie denies it. "I'm not a freaking superhero, Jesus Christ." Hughie returns to his late parents' house where him and Annie are staying, and he sees that package that Annie told him about on the phone that was waiting for him. Hughie opens the package and sees it's a book, so he takes the book to the bathroom to give it a read. And when he opens the book, the page reads, "Dear Becky." Hughie reads it some more, and he realizes that this is Becky's diary, Butcher's deceased wife. You'll remember that Butcher's wife kept a diary back when she was alive. Well, it appears that this diary is Becky's, but Butcher wrote some footnotes and additions to it, so his own little commentary in the diary. Hughie freaks out when he sees this. He falls off the toilet and cowers on the floor for a bit because Butcher is like a ghost in his past he doesn't want to revisit. Hughie, though, he eventually picks up the diary once again and reads it some more. In the diary, Butcher is writing about how much he loves his wife and is writing back to her in the diary. Butcher recounts a story where, back in the day, him, Frenchie, Mother's Milk, the female, and Greg Mallory were hunting down a rogue superhuman. This superhuman appears to just be a 10-year-old boy. The female grabs the boy's tongue, and Butcher cuts the kid's tongue right off. The boy screams. We see in the bathroom there's a blade and blood everywhere from the boy's mouth. Butcher and the crew begin to wash their hands and prepare to leave the bathroom. The angry boy, though, now missing his tongue, is trying to speak, and it is now revealed the boy is a parody of the DC hero Shazam, and right now he is in his 10-year-old boy form, but he's trying to say the magic word to transform into his powerful adult superhuman form, but he's failing because his tongue was cut off. So we see the boy trying to say the magic word, Shazam! 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 But the boy can't say the name properly and he can't transform. The little Shazam boy is pissed, but the boys did their job successfully. Butcher, though, he's looking at this kid who hates him so much, and Butcher feels good about the work that he is doing, but there's a small part of him that also feels bad because this was just a 10-year-old kid. Butcher would never admit it to the rest of the boys, but he feels this remorse a little bit. And he knows that the reason that he feels that is because of Becky. And he imagines Becky touching his shoulder right then, but of course she is not actually there, but she's still impacting his choices. The female, she punches the little kid in the belly and he falls down. Butcher writes in the diary, "You're still there, Becky. All the good stuff you've done for me and got me to believe about myself, That's you, and I don't know why, but I feel like you're getting stronger. You aren't going nowhere anytime soon, but you see, I just can't have that because the way things are looking with the soups, they're going to get worse, which means the things I'll have to do are going to get worse. God forgive me, love, but I think what I've got to do is kill you. I assume Butcher is speaking metaphorically here because his wife is already dead at this point. But Butcher, he has to kill her voice in his head that is stopping him from doing the work that he needs to do to kill all these soups. Hughie, he is kind of surprised as he reads this. He closes the book and he stares at it for a bit. And Annie calls to him from outside the bathroom and asks if he is okay. And that is the end of issue 1. All right, so that was issue 1. I did enjoy diving back into this world, and the art style is very reminiscent to the original series. So thankfully, that is staying true to that. I liked checking back in on Hughie's world. You know, his parents are dead, which is sad. He's living in Scotland, at least temporarily right now. Him and Annie, they are not married and they don't have kids yet. And we see a lot of Hughie talking with his friend Bobby, a main character in that Highland Laddie miniseries. And I enjoyed some of their conversation, although I must say it went on a little bit too long. Now, don't get me wrong. I agree with a lot of Garth Ennis's views, and I could read a blog post called Garth Ennis Rants About the World, and I could highly enjoy that. But in the context of the comic, it really slowed things down. Just hearing Hughie complain about wokeness and hating on Trump and bashing Brexit, all interesting, but slows down the story. But finally, when we dive into the meat of the story and Hughie gets that diary and starts reading some of Butcher's notes, that was interesting. I liked the stuff with the Shazam kid and cutting off his tongue so he can't say his magic word. That was just classic boys stuff. And we're going to get some exploration of Butcher's character and him killing off that voice in his head of his wife so he can do what needs to be done. And that's going to be some interesting exploration. I still don't know if this miniseries is completely necessary, though, but I'm going to stay around for the ride. I'm a little lukewarm on this first issue, though, but I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10. Thank you all for watching. I will eventually recap the entire series. I think I'm going to wait until it wraps up and then do one big video breaking it down, but stay tuned for that in the future, and check out some of my other videos I'm doing right now. Right now, I'm going through Why the Last Man, and I will be planning on putting out Volume 5 still this Sunday.